Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. More importantly, welcome to my first ever video. I'm super excited to be going on this journey with you guys, and so basically what we're going to be doing is just a franchise 2021 Detroit Lions franchise mode, and it's just going to be a casual video for you guys where I'm going to be going over everything in the off season. I'm going to be going over why I chose the Detroit Lions, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun as we go on. This is going to be a long-term series that you guys can follow, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. You can see me going over the schedule here. Really, it's just a review of where they left off last year. What I decided to do was almost how NBA does it in the play now type thing. And I kind of just jumped in the playoffs. I didn't want to play the full season. I thought it'd be a waste. We already know what happened. And I thought, starting under a new season with a new head coach and general manager would be better for us. You can see we just went through the schedule. The type of series this is going to be, it's going to be realistic. What we want to do here is just keep it, as down to the ground as possible. What we're going to be trying to do is make, real decisions. We're not going to be trying to be cheesy. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. So basically we're going through Matthew Stafford, and there's a lot of questions on this team. And those questions really surrounded around the quarterback and what we were going to do with Matthew Stafford. A lot of rumors in real life right now are saying that, it might be best for Matthew Stafford to move on, get him on a playoff team. And I think that's partially correct. But so we went in there and we had to look at his stats. We're looking at his stats and we're seeing that, Matthew Stafford is still a very capable quarterback. And with the right weapons, I think he can still make a big boom in this league. And I think with a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, if he has a healthy team and if he has a couple weapons, I think he's the kind of quarterback who can still sneak you into the playoffs. As we're moving on here, we're looking at the stats. We're looking at free agents. Marvin Jones had already made it clear that he wanted to move on from the Detroit Lions. He wanted to join a different team. And, we were going to respect that in this series. We were going to let him go. That's what we ended up deciding to do. And we also looked at our other weapons. TJ Hawkinson had an amazing season. With a lot of questions surrounding him. Was he going to be able to be a top-notch tight end in this league? And I think he proved it last season that he was definitely very capable. Another question here as we're looking at Kenny Golladay was what were we going to do with Kenny Golladay? He was injured all of last season. But the problem is that, game-wise, he was going to be demanding a lot of money. And that was going to be something we had to overlook. Detroit Lions has notably made a couple bad contracts in the past couple years. And we had to realize that, going into this offseason, we weren't going to be as cash-strapped as we wanted. Okay, we're continuing to look on here. The defense, Jamie Collins, Tracy Walker, all big-name guys who had good seasons for the Lions. But it was for sure that this defense was aging. And we were going to have to make decisions on that aspect as well. We needed to become younger. We wanted to become more explosive. And I think that's really the big goal that we had going into this offseason. We continue looking, and the big name over here, Romeo Okwara. What a season he had. He definitely popped off 14 sacks. It came almost out of nowhere. This was a really small name guy, and he just pops off, and it's awesome. Also an unhealthy Trey Flowers would be coming back next season. One thing going on to this team is you feel pretty comfortable with two good players on the ends for this defense. Another big change that was going to come from Detroit under new coach Jared Gallant was they would be shifting to a 4-3. Under Matt Patricia, they went to a 3-4. They will now be switching to a 4-3, which means that we had to find players as well, whether it be in free agency or most likely in the draft due to the money situation. We needed to find players who can fit that model of play that we wanted. So we continue going on here. Matt Prater, a kicker. What we realized with Matt Prater last year is that he definitely struggled over the 40-yard mark, which is not a good look for kickers. I mean, from 40 yards to 50 yards, you want it to be almost automatic. Of course, that's a lot, and that's asking a lot. But for many of the best kickers, that's almost automatic. And he struggles from the 40-plus and 50-plus yard lines. We go back to Matthew Stafford, and I'm telling you guys right now, it was a big decision for us. We needed to start thinking. Of course, I'm not going to tell you what we end up doing. But he's got a big contract, and we had to keep that in mind, whether it come from releasing him or for trading him. He had a very big contract. Looking at the rest of the team, the running back situation, of course, Adrian Peterson for a majority of the season, this season, I guess, was the lead back until the very end where, a decision was made to move on to DeAndre Swift. Adrian Peterson is very likely going to be retiring, and he ended up retiring. And so we had to move on, and we had to look at the other guys that we had, whether it be Kerryon Johnson or DeAndre Swift. I thought we had two pieces just with them two that we can build on, two guys who can grow quite a bit. And I think overall the running back situation was going to be pretty much taken care of for the next, hopefully it would be a trial run next season. That's the ideal goal for the head coaching staff this year, but it's going to be a trial run. Other than that, we have to look back at the receiver position. Mohamed Sanu was a guy that I wasn't very sure if I was interested in keeping. We also had to worry about Danny Amendola, who's now 35 years old. Would he be sticking around for another season? I would love to have Danny Amendola. He's a great slot receiver, but realistically, that might not be an option. Tight end situation. Between TJ Hawkinson and Jesse James, I thought we had two good receiving options. It was just about finding a guy who can help us in the pass game, and I think that was the big goal. Other than that, we were very happy with the tight end duo that we ended up having. There was also the O-line, and we started looking over it, and I was very happy with certain pieces that we have, and specifically Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow at center. Taylor Decker does have a multi-year contract. He's locked in for the next 4 years, and I think he's going to be the type of guy that we can keep there, and I think he's just going to be a solid piece. No, is he one of the best left tackles in the league? Absolutely not. Does he make mistakes? 100%. But I think he's a good building piece around this O-line and a good steady guy to build around. Frank Ragnow is the other big name. We're happy to have him on his rookie contract still. He's made great strides to becoming one of the best centers in the league. And really what it left us with is holes at the guard positions and at the right tackle. You want, especially in, Madden 21, a good run game is key. And just in the NFL now, we're seeing a reinsurgence in the run game. It is not all about the pass anymore. And I think that's what we're going to want to build our team around, okay? We are going to be losing some weapons. Whether it be Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, or Danny Amendola, we're not coming back with the same receiving core. Specifically speaking, they weren't even healthy all of last year. So offensively, this is going to be a much different team, and we're going to have to make some big adjustments. And I think to help Matthew Stafford as he gets older, and of course in Madden, the regression system, turning to a running style team, a run-first team, might be in our best interest. And of course, we're looking at Vaitai, one of the bad contracts we were talking about coming off of the Eagles. That is a massive contract for a guy who's not even starting. But his contract is so big that we have no choice but to probably keep him around. I mean, cutting him would make a huge salary deficit. Going around, we also look at the defensive tackle, looking at left end, right end. So I'm very happy with where the D-line is. We see Everson Griffin, who came in from a trade this season. He's also a free agent, and we'd have to figure out what to do with him. Did we want to keep a veteran depth option in Everson Griffin? That was another big question. I didn't think it was necessarily a bad idea, but how much would it cost? Because, of course, real-life contracts are a lot more forgiving than, what Madden offers or what Madden, says these players demand. And so we have to work around that as well. But like I said, the goal of this series is going to be as realistic as possible. When it comes to gameplay, of course, I'll be controlling the offense. But defensively, I want to see the players make them plays by themselves. So what we will be doing defensively is we're just going to be using the safety. We're not going to be using linebackers so we can do the zones ourselves. We're not going to be going D-line because we know on D-line, if you do control D-line, then you're going to shed the offensive lineman way too quick. So we're going to be using the safety. And unfortunately, unlike Madden 20, you can no longer just hold L1 and have, the computer control them the whole time. So we'd have to be very conscious of that and, try and stick to our zone. And I think that's going to be important for the realism's sake. We're going to let our computer players, or just our players in general, how they're supposed to play in Madden, kind of just deal with it how they are. And we're going to have to build a team around that. Another big hole was going to be the linebacker situation. With Jamie Collins now getting older, we don't necessarily have that answer. And I think a big part of any defense is a stud middle linebacker. He's usually the defensive quarterback, and I think, that was something that we needed to find. Jared Davis was definitely going to get another opportunity, but he's already getting to that point where, he's in his 4th year. We would have to re-sign him. I think we do decide to do that. But finding that stud middle linebacker is definitely going to be of interest. Going through the cornerback position, we have some veterans in Desmond Trufant, perhaps not what he once was. Okay, but we also have Justin Coleman, one of the better slot corners in this league. But we also have Jeff Okudah, who should be healthy for next season. And we would love to see him continue to develop, as he's going to be a big cornerstone of this defense for years to come if he ends up panning out. At the safety position, Daron Harmon, another veteran who's going into free agency. Finding another safety might be an answer. Daron Harmon is also just a steady player, good to have. He's definitely a good zone player. You can definitely get a lot worse. Looking at the sliders now, this is the XP thing. A big goal for me is, specifically in free agency, 2, 3, 4 seasons down the line, maybe even more, is that Madden has the tendency once you get that far into free agency, good players just don't show up anymore. And that's because players just don't develop that way. And, if players don't develop well, then it just keeps things uninteresting. Of course, keeping it realistic, I'm not looking for high overalls. High overalls is not what we're looking for. We're going to be going solely off performance. And performance is going to be a big thing as we hop into this game. So whether a player is 65 overall or a 92, that might be a big stretch and quite the big discrepancy between the two. But if, the lower overall player is playing better and is performing better, and let's just say receiver, I'm finding that, a 65 overall player is creating more separation, making bigger catches, then we're going to go with the 65 overall. I think that's going to be best for the series, and realistically, it's just a better option. Going over the Pro Bowl now, it was definitely an interesting Pro Bowl. Of course, I don't think, I looked at it quickly. I do not think it's the real Pro Bowl roster. We did see TJ Hawkinson make it, which is very exciting. Our young tight end going there. We see the playoff bracket here. The Saints, of course, are eliminated. I started this series before the wild card round started, so it was kind of cool seeing where Madden thought it would go. So, Saints and Chiefs. Chiefs are still alive, Saints are not. We then went over the offensive players and defensive players MVP. We saw Josh Allen win MVP and not Aaron Rodgers. It's just kind of cool to see where Madden kind of directs itself. Derrick Henry wasn't even in the top discussion, which in a sense makes sense because he's not in real life, which I think is absolutely bogus, but that's the truth. Continue going on here. We saw their offensive rookies and defensive rookie of the years for both divisions. Some pretty notable names. I think it's kind of what everybody expects to win. Justin Jefferson was up there. Antonio Gibson had himself a decent end of season. And it was finally time to start looking at the re-signing stage. And this was one of the hardest parts of this whole entire thing. This, and as you guys will see, free agency. We had a lot of big decisions, like I said. Whether it be Matthew Stafford or notably Kenny Golladay, our number one receiver, we needed to do something. And, that decision was not as clear as it may seem. Kenny Golladay was demanding quite a bit of money. And if we did give him a big contract right away and not, perhaps wait and try and give him, a smaller contract in free agency, it could have strapped us up for cash for quite a while. We see our veterans in Duron Harmon, Marvin Jones, as you saw earlier. We automatically said we were not interested, and we ended up doing the same for Duron Harmon and Everson Griffin. And that decision was truly made when I did see what kind of cap space we were working with. And overall, I don't believe we really signed anybody back. Jared Davis, as I said, we were very interested in giving him another opportunity. He's just a great athlete. In worst case, he'll be great depth for us. But, overall, we just wanted to give him another shot and a new system as well. It was, like I said, we were going to be moving to a 4-3. We also see Jamal Agnew, and he's one of the better return mans in the league. So I thought for the money that he was asking, it was definitely going to be a good decision for us to bring him in. The only other, superstar ability return that we have in this game is Cordero Patterson. Because of overall and position, we would be offering Cordero Patterson quite a bit more money than Jamal Agnew. So signing Jamal Agnew was kind of a no-brainer to me. Will he see any receiver looks? Will he see any running back looks? We've yet to decide that. I think a guy with his athletic ability could definitely be interesting, but it's not as obvious as it may seem. We then went through the contracts after seeing what Kenny Golladay was demanding and realizing that we can no longer sign him to the preferred deal or the deal that the man expects the player to demand. We needed to make extra money if we wanted to make moves in free agency and shore up this team. So right away, we start looking at possible options to cut. And unfortunately, as we previously said, the contracts that we have on this team is just not very possible without taking a huge salary cap hit for the next season. And this further puts us in a hole where, money is not right away available. And, when you have money, when you don't have money available and, a lot of positions to fill, it can create a lot of issues. And, next year was definitely going to be a different roster, naturally. But, it wasn't going to be a roster where we can just bring in some of the top guys in free agency and, hope to, make a playoff push right away with Matthew Stafford if we did decide to bring him back. At this point, I'm starting to realize that the best decision for us will probably be to focus on the draft and to focus on, players that we can bring in, young players on the rookie deals, necessarily cheaper deals. And I think with the Detroit Lions, with the 7th pick, we were in the opportunity to bring in a great player and, you know, a guy who can really help the team. But it was really about where did we need the most amount of help. And it was only until free agency that we realized that we really needed to focus on certain positions, when we once again realized just how cap-strapped we were. I tried to make some moves, and you'll see that later, but it was just really impossible, and it was not for the best interest of the team. And so our tough decisions were all the way through until the draft were nonstop. We had to figure out what the best option was for the team. Going over retirements, some notable names: Philip Rivers, who just retired this morning actually, and, you know, Julian Edelman as well. We can see Adrian Peterson, Danny Amendola. They both retired from the team, so we knew right away that we would not be getting them back. And, you know, another big name right there is Adam Vinatieri, Super Bowl winning kicker, one of the best kickers in history. There was also Clay Matthews, Terrell Suggs, just a lot of players from my era of football that are now gone. And it's just starting to show how long, you know, these players have been in the league. And, you know, these were technically big players that we, you know, are no longer going to be able to get to see. So now in free agency, and this was where things started to really get tough and big decisions needed to be made. Right away we looked at the backup quarterback situation. I didn't know if Chase Daniel was the best option. We also looked at running backs, and, you know, I was interested in one person, and that was Matt Breida. I said earlier that we were very comfortable with the running back situation we had, or at least willing to test them out and see what they can do. But I thought Matt Breida could possibly bring something to the offense that we don't have, and that is just pure speed. A guy who can get to that second level and not get caught from behind. Reviewing Kenny Golladay now, we did make an offer, but as you can see, it only leaves us with $7 million. That was one of the big, tough decisions we needed to make. For the time being, I did take the offer away to see what else was available and see if our money could be better spent. We looked at the linebacker position because I said that was a big need. And there just wasn't some big names that I was really interested in. The cornerback situation was definitely tough. Seeing a guy like Shaquille Griffin get a pretty small offer from Cleveland. We have got aging corners in Desmond Trufant and Coleman. And, you know, finding a stud who can grow around with Jeff Okudah would have been a great addition to the team. We also had Daron Harmon go from the team. And that's when we started looking at Malik Hooker, who just got off his rookie contract with the Colts. A guy who hasn't necessarily been healthy during his time with the Colts. And with that, we started thinking possibly of making a move for him. I didn't think he would have an expensive contract. And, you know, I think that would be a great fit for the team with our whole. We once again go to revisit Kenny Golladay, trying to figure out just how much money we can save with this offer, not by not giving him what exactly he wants. And with the offer that he currently had, it didn't give us a lot of room, and quite frankly, we had to actually give him more. And after giving a contract to Kenny Golladay and then Malik Hooker, it left us with nothing. So we started looking at other receiver options. Unfortunately, Sammy Watkins was there, and you're going to see me, we give an offer to Sammy Watkins, but I quickly go back to see Kenny Golladay. This is how hard a decision was for me. And, you know, we ended up deciding going for Sammy Watkins. I thought for the better of the team, we'd be able to bring in Sammy Watkins, bring in Malik Hooker, two guys who can come in and start, but we're demanding a lot less money. And it's for that reason that, you know, Sammy Watkins only got a 2-year deal. Malik Hooker got a much smaller deal than he was expecting. One that I thought was realistic, coming off injuries. A guy who's been a little, struggled in coverages in the past, and as a free safety, you know, being a good cover guy is definitely important. We see Frank Ragnow there on the 5th-year option. That was a no-brainer. He is our best offensive lineman, and, you know, the center position is just a great position to build around when you're building an offensive line. And finding a young guy like him who's as good as he is, it was a no-brainer for us. We definitely had to bring him back. You can see here now I'm just zooming by the free agency rounds, and we do a little bit of scouting here. Because we decided to go play now, I didn't really get the opportunity to get connected to these guys, which is why I'm not showing too much of the draft. Just like you guys, I'm practically seeing everything at the same time you guys are. By doing that and by advancing through the season like that, you don't get all the scouting points. You don't get to, every week get to look at these prospects and at some point say, wow, okay, I really want this guy. I didn't get that opportunity. Which is why for me, I just didn't feel the need to show too much of the scouting process and just kind of prospects that we saw. I decided to keep it a secret. There were definitely some names that I was definitely interested in, but unfortunately, I just didn't feel as a connection-wise they were worth showing off Going into next year, we're definitely going to take more time during that weekly. I'll be showing you guys more prospects, guys that I really like. We're going to be more involved as we'll know where we're drafting as the season goes. Just overall, we're going to get a chance to build a team around what we want to do. And I think that's what we are really focusing on. So going through the season wasn't necessarily a rush, but definitely wasn't something I wanted to take too much time over. So as we go in here, the first pick, the Jaguars are selecting, of course. All the draft picks are in order as they will be in real life until you get to the playoff teams. And the Jaguars do indeed go for the best quarterback in the class. And I thought he was an interesting prospect. His top 3 skills were definitely interesting. And he was definitely a good player. Was he going to be the franchise quarterback for them? That was yet to see. I didn't know what his development was. I didn't know what anything is. And of course, with the development just in general being not so good in Madden right now, it was hard to tell right away. And then the big surprise came up. The Bengals chose a quarterback, the second best quarterback in the class. And of course, Joe Burrow was injured, as you can see right away. I'm starting to think after this patch that they just released saying that teams with a quarterback that were drafted the year before and whatnot, that, computer wouldn't necessarily be looking for them. But of course, that's a prime example of, it not being necessarily true. And finally, our pick came up, and I was able to draft a guy that I loved right away. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy this pick, especially since we decided to move on from Kenny Golladay, the tough decision that was. And that was Rodney Foreman, a big receiver who's 6'5", over 220 pounds, and, still has that great ability to be athletic on the field with the ball in his hands, and even as he's route running. He has a lot of potential and a great foundation to be a great player overall. And we looked around at it, and, he's got great athletic ability naturally. For a guy who's 6'5", it was quite surprising. And I thought he was an amazing pick. Of course, we didn't get the development that we may have wanted. But, him being a receiver, it's much easier to get a development on a receiver than anybody else. Of course, as we keep, being realistic, that doesn't mean we were going to force feed him the ball. We were going to do things right. And finally, our second pick came up, and we had a discussion between 2 guys, and that was Blackwell here, who we were looking at moving into guard, and of course Shelby, the quarterback. Was it finally time to find a replacement for Matthew Stafford in the future? So far, we have decided not to deal him, and bringing in Rodney Foreman further, solidified his position. I thought that bringing in a first-round weapon for him, a guy who's 6'5" and still athletic as if he's only, 6'1", 6'2", was going to be a great weapon for him. And eventually we ended up going Philip Shelby. This was a guy who needed to grow. Not the most athletic guy, but he had a great foundation as well. He's got great throw power. His accuracies are, in the right area. He had great throw under pressure. He had great throw on the run for a 74 overall rookie. And he was actually better than Hodges, the quarterback that the Bengals chose. And I only got him in the second round. From the start of the draft process, I thought it would be best that we start looking at quarterback. And I started looking at the guys who were, prospected to go in the first round. And I was hoping that one of them would slip. And Shelby was one of those guys that I was just very interested there. And finally, we decided to go Crawford in the third round. Just good defensive tackle depth. Danny Shelton would not be around for much longer, I don't think. Danny Shelton is a great run stopper, but when you talk about putting him in a 4-3 where he's not being a nose tackle who's head up on the center, that's not necessarily what he's used to doing. And it's for that reason that we decided to go draft a defensive tackle. And, it would be a backup plan if Danny Shelton just didn't work out in a 4-3 system. Eventually, we started looking for a fourth round. We started looking for trade down options. I do believe we ended up taking it, and we do. And it's into the fifth round that we decided to double dip on receiver here for Kerry Haynes. And is another guy who just had a great foundation. Wasn't necessarily the fastest, but definitely somebody who can build and, can someday become, a fourth or third receiving option. And I thought that was a great pick for us. In the fifth round, we go Miles Klein. We needed Mitch Klein, and we needed linebacker help, and that was definitely a big decision. And between him and Cochran, there was one thing that was different between them. That was the age. One was 24 and one was 23. And by the time you get to that 24, developing a rookie who's already 24 can get pretty tough. But I thought, the skills that Klein was bringing, it was just unavoidable. So finally, the draft is done. I showed you guys all the notable guys, but we decided to revisit Philip Shelby. And, looking at him for a second time, I was still so impressed. And I thought getting him in the second round with the second pick was with the seventh pick was an absolute steal. And, when it comes to finding the future of the Detroit Lions, not knowing how much longer Matthew Stafford can last, and maybe we hadn't seen it yet, but Matthew Stafford did end up declining, of course, which, that's Madden. Quarterbacks necessarily don't decline until a little later in their careers, but as Madden has it, everybody declines around the same age, and that's, 29 to early 30s, and at that point, if they're not a 99 overall, it can get pretty tough to play with them. But Matthew Stafford deserved his shot. We looked at his stats earlier, and he had legitimate stats, and when we compared it to, his stats when he had a full healthy season, they looked very identical. The touchdown numbers weren't as high, but that makes sense. Danny Amendola wasn't healthy. Kenny Golladay, who was renowned for his big touchdown ability, I think several times we looked at it, had put over, 10 touchdowns. He just didn't have those receiving options. The running game was not necessarily solid with, Adrian Peterson only having under 700 yards and then Swift not too far under. And, we just had to bring in more consistency in the offense. But we had to do that with a tight budget. But, overall, I think we built a team that, Matthew Stafford can work with. I think Matthew Stafford, like I said before, is the type of quarterback who can still sneak you into the playoffs if you have a solid team. And for us, it was just going to be about shoring up the defense and bringing in some weapons that can develop around him. And Rodney Foreman was the big piece there. Rodney Foreman, I was absolutely overjoyed about getting. And you can see us looking at a couple prospects. I'm still very, very shocked that the Bengals go quarterback. And, it was almost disappointing. And, I made sure to go check on him, made sure he didn't have his hidden development, because then I just thought it would have been a waste, because I don't think he'll see playing time unless he gets hurt again. But, that's something we'd have to see. We're looking at the other first-round receiver who was the pick right after us, Tyreek Barber, and we then went to compare them. And I thought we got the better end of that. I think the size of Foreman alone made him worth everything. And here we're looking at Wendell Ash. And this was the target I wanted in the second round. I was absolutely disappointed when he was drafted by the Jaguars. I really thought he would slip down, and he didn't. And it was very disappointing for us. I thought he would have been the perfect prospect for us to man the middle. And unfortunately, we just don't get that opportunity. Quite soon, we're going to be able to see some practice gameplay. I wanted to see the pieces that we brought in together. Rodney Foreman, Sammy Watkins in this offense. I wanted to see more of Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift to see what they can do. And overall, the offensive line just didn't change the way I wanted to, and I think that's a big part of the budget. Offensive linemen in Madden 21 are hard to find in the draft. They're usually not very good, and finding one with abilities is even rare. So we're going in with a pretty similar offensive line, unfortunately one that wasn't very good. Defensively, we did make some changes. At the point of the recording and at the point of practice, Malik Hooker was out still on injury. He had 1 week left, so by week 2 of preseason, he was healthy to go. You can see us doing just some quick depth chart changes, putting Jeff Okudah back, who is now back from injury, fully healthy. And some notable names still around. Jared Davis and Tavai would be manning the middle linebacker position. Jamie Collins, coming back, a veteran, did regress as well from an 81 to a 78, but still our best option at linebacker. And we started looking at the holes we had on this team, and with the little amount of funds that we did have, we started looking for veterans at the receiver. Like I said earlier, we were very interested in Matt Breida. We wanted some guy who can just run with the ball in his hands and not get caught. And we need another receiver. I think we needed more depth. And with the arm Matthew Stafford has, bringing in Brashad Perriman was the best option for us for what we were looking. At the linebacker position, we needed to shore up, just add more depth as well. Hopefully some young guys that we can perhaps get an opportunity with later on. And Dakota Allen, I'm sure a lot of you know who that is. Quite the famous name from a special series there. So we decided to pick him up, spent a lot of time with the Jaguars, maybe a little bit of revenge for taking our linebacker that we wanted. But they did let him go in free agency, so I'm not sure how much revenge that is. We also signed Duke Riley. And big play right there, the first play in practice was a touchdown by DeAndre Swift. The next play, not so embarrassing. Matthew Stafford, perhaps showing the fruits of the regression, ends up just, absolutely overthrowing the receiver. And finally, we got a couple plays later, we get Rodney Foreman on his first catch with the team. A little slant route, nothing too fancy there. We had to keep it simple for the most part. And not too long after, Matthew Stafford also throws his first interception. There was a lot of big questions on this team, and we can see Sammy Watkins get his first catch there for a big touchdown. He's going to bring some downfield play ability for us. I think I'm excited to have him on the team. And, at some point we will see Shelby, but I wanted to see what the first team looked like. We were able to run the ball pretty well, which was a little surprising. But then again, we don't have the best D-line or run defense in general to make a lot of plays in the backfield. We then wanted to get Swift in the passing game. You can see him breaking a couple tackles. That's what we're really excited for is Swift is just ability with the ball in his hands. We then go deep at some point. Of course, we wanted to test Rodney Foreman in that 6'5" frame in the deep game. You can see we throw an interception there. Not necessarily the best decision, but for what we were just trying to accomplish, we were just trying to throw deep to him, as we did right there, and it ended up working out in our favor, which was awesome. And this was perhaps the most impressive play. T.J. Hockenson slipping his feet in at the goalpost, or the little goal thing. And we continue going with Matthew Stafford. He definitely had a couple big plays, but I'm also showing some of his negatives. And that was another impressive one right there. Sammy Watkins able to slip his feet inbounds off a tough throw. You can see us reviewing this one. This one I was not sure, and I really wanted to see this one again. And just a beautiful play right there. Very excited about that. That's going to be a great option for us. And Rodney Foreman once again on the slot. And I think what was most impressive about him was because he's just so agile and quick for a 6'5" guy, that he was still going to be very useful in the passing game. And the short passing game. And finally, Shelby gets his time to play. And look at that tight throw down there to T.J. Hockenson. He also had the corner route to DeAndre Swift just to play before. But that throw was absolutely impressive. Putting it on a line and fitting it right in. Okay, we then hit Rodney Foreman on the comeback route, and because of his great foundation, he's got great route running skills as well, and he's going to be a phenomenal option for us, and I'm super excited about that. And just this play right here just caps off some of that athletic ability that he has after the catch as well. And that was the final play of the practice for us. I didn't show too much negative of Shelby, of course, as a rookie, and with his stats, he had a couple overthrows, but I was just so excited to have him on the team, and perhaps have our future quarterback as well, have our future franchise quarterback, and him having the opportunity to grow under Matthew Stafford was also an amazing option for him. And I was just super excited about what he can bring to this team.